and welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go for a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. This episode will be going over the challenges that present themselves when newer players actually look to get into World of Warcraft, whether it be they're coming back from a lengthy absence away from Azeroth or looking to get into it on a completely fresh set of eyes almost on the world itself. We have the weekly news as always. Basrikron and the Zakali Elders are your world bosses for the week. Basrikron is located in the Waking Shore, Zakali Elders in Zaralak Caverns. Battleground are your bonus event for this week, so you earn more honour in these battlegrounds. Arathi Blizzard is your brawl for the week. This one's very simple. It limits your vision to about 25-30 yards. You can't see anything past that. Fortified, Storming and Bursting are your mythic affixes for this week. Fortified, the non-boss enemies have more health and damage. Storming, there's very simple. It's very small vortexes. Simply move away from them. And Bursting, when a mob dies, it does a AoE debuff, and this debuff can stack indefinitely. Make sure that you get either Master Spelled or you kill them in sort of almost packs. So you kill 5 and then stop, and then kill the next 5, stop, etc. Now, before we get on to the weapon of the week, I do want to say a massive thank you to everyone who does tune in each and every week to the tavern. It is growing at a really nice rate, and having new patrons as well as old patrons really does help out the channel. I do have to ask for your support a little bit more though. This podcast is not my full-time job, and I do put in as much effort as I can without having anything sort of hidden behind a paywall. With all of this said, down below there is a link to support the show even further from as little as $3 a month. This would mean a massive help to the show, and it will really allow me to get more content out for you guys without having to, slow it down in any sense to focus on other things and other projects. Those who support the show have a chance to be featured in an episode or even shouted out. But a massive thank you to everyone for even just listening, and really appreciate the extra support you guys give me. But let's get back to the episode. So the weapon that I wanted to look at this week was the Scepter of Sargeras. This is one that Destruction Warlocks can get their hands on via the artifact system in Legion. Its origins, after his defeat at the Well of Eternity, Sargeras, the big pantheon god essentially, immediately planned his next method of infiltrating Azeroth. He knew he couldn't rely on a static portal to serve a titan. Such a gateway required an astronomical amount of power, and the most promising source that had been destroyed in the last attempt, which was the Well of Eternity. Moreover, the Highborn's laborious preparation and spell work had given away his intentions, which had allowed the Night Elf resistance to thwart him. If he wanted to overcome Azeroth's defenders, Sargeras needed to enter the world with minimal warning. Thus, he commanded the Eridar to forge a tool that would wrench open rifts between worlds for only a short time, just long enough to let a portion of his soul through. Although that meant he couldn't enter Azeroth in his most devastating form, such an instrument would clear a path for his avatar to lead the Legion's invasion or carry out subtler schemes. Such an instrument would also weaken the integrity of the physical universe and threaten to collapse it, but Sargeras considered those to be the only side benefits. This is kind of like what Warlocks have now. They open like small little rifts. It's really cool. It's a really cool spell. First, scores of Magi conducted dark rituals to channel countless portals into a single staff. They then projected the empowered artifact into every corner of the Great Dark Beyond, weaving it into the fabric of reality, creating a thread that could be pulled to unravel the seams of the physical universe at will. To fuel this monstrous undertaking, 100 warlocks sacrificed 100 demons. Yeah, 100 demons, selecting them from among the Legion troops that had been part of the failed invasion of Azeroth. Thus was forged the jeweled Scepter of Sargeras. Soon after the War of the Ancients, Sargeras had a vision. The Well of Eternity imploded once again, but this time it dragged him down to the very core of Azeroth. He was there for only an instant, but in that moment he saw Azeroth slumbering at World Soul, and in that moment the World Soul opened one eye and gazed at the Dark Titan. He was enraptured. Yes, enraptured. Since then, the eye of Azeroth's World Soul would not been far from his thoughts. He commanded the Eridar who forged the scepter to crown it with that lone wondrous orb next to it. The Eridar placed 2 Nathrezim wings and a testament to Sargeras' conception of the World Soul, corrupted, demonic, and most importantly, his. So it's a cool looking stuff. It is a very cool looking stuff. It's only come up a couple of times, but essentially it's in the hands of players now via the artifact system, and you use its power in Legion to essentially draw out the power of the sword that Sargeras impaled on in our world. I forget what the name of that sword is. It begins with a Q, but it's eluding my my memory as of the moment. But it's a very cool scepter, and essentially it allows you to open these rifts to the Great Dark Beyond, the twisting nether, that kind of thing, and you can summon essentially these bolts that come out, either a chaos bolt, these purple small bolts, or these green more chaos bolts. And this is still in the game today, and it's a very cool weapon. It is a very cool looking weapon. It's very warlocky in its purpose. You can tell that it was made by warlocks. Again, I don't do it justice by reading very small bits and pieces of it. There is still a little bit more to it, but I can't go into that much depth about it, sadly, because we will be here for the entire episode. But let's get into the actual sort of meat and bones of this episode. Challenges for newer players. Now, you might think, oh, there's probably not a lot because, it's just you level and then you do endgame content. Yes, but no. If you were to look at this from a completely new perspective, you jump in to a game. What's the first thing you've got to do? Okay, I'll create a character. So you're suddenly presented with teams of classes and races. Now, the race that you pick, you don't really have that much thought about, do you? When you first pick your very first class, or race, I should say, it's very much, oh, this one's cool, I'll go with this. Whereas if you look at it now, when you do late game, it's like, okay, I've got to pick a dwarf because their racial gives me an extra, they're running an assassination rogue, and I need to pick a dwarf to counter the assassination rogue, and his bleeds, and this will give me an upper hand in this matchup, that kind of deal. People don't really think about that. That's fine. You just pick what's cool. That's good. And then you pick the classes, and it's like, oh, well, okay, it gives you a small description of it, like druids can tank, heal, deal damage, and they use different forms to do these damages to tank and heal and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, yeah, the information's there somewhat. So that's fine. You have your class and your race. You log in, and then suddenly you're thrown into this game where you've got NPCs in front of you, you've got a whole UI that's sort of buzzing, and you've got this glowing spell, and it's like, oh, okay, this is somewhat simple. You talk to the guy, and you start going through your quests and stuff, and you get to level 10, you do the introduction stuff, and then you get talents, and you're like, wait, what's this? Okay, these are talent points, these are talent trees. You read through your talents, and it's like, yeah, that seems quite simple. The talent tree is very simple, and the way that World of Warcraft has laid it out right now is actually very good ever since the introduction to that, Wandering Isle or whatever it's called. it does make it a very nice tutorial island, essentially, for newer players, which is really good, and it's something that they should look to improve upon, because having new players enter these or play these games, it's very tough to get into, essentially. So you get to level 10, and then you're out in the open world, and you don't really know what to do, where to go, what the hell are professions? You know, what are pet battles? Why does this have like a paw print on it on the minimap? Why does this have like, why is this telling me to go over here now? What is Cataclysm when I talk to Chromie? What is Legion? What is the Burning Crusade? What is Wrath of the Lich King? You know, you get many different things, and it's like, oh wait, what do I do here? Okay, why would I do this over this one? Why would I do that over that? Why is many people running around on mounts? How do I get a mount? How do I repair my gear? How do I sell items? How do I put stuff on the auction? Where do I actually just get better gear and like level up my character now? You know, there's many of these different things that they don't necessarily point you in the right direction of as easily. Professions and pet battles, you know, all the smaller things are something that you kind of just learn in time, and when you've got time to yourself, and it's like, okay, I'm going to go have a look at the professions and stuff like that on the side, the stuff that doesn't really affect the core mechanics of the gameplay, and you just want to explore, because in an MMO there is that, you know, there's that space to explore, like at your own free will, and it's like, oh, I didn't realize that this is over here, or these professions meant that I could have some rocket boots to run faster, or I could craft my own gear using tailoring as a priest, you know, all that kind of deal. And it's really good that there is still that freedom. But then you think, okay, that's retail. There's 2 other World of Warcraft still. So when they look at World of Warcraft, why would they go to World of Warcraft Dragonflight instead of World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King and World of Warcraft Classic? What's the difference? I thought that it was all just one game. No, you see, World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King is very much, you're in the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, and the level goes up to level 80, compared to Dragonflight, which is level 70, and then Classic is level 60. And then Wrath of the Lich King leveling is a bit slower, but it's a bit more fleshed out, each zone. Whereas Classic, you are jumping from zone to zone because there's actually not enough quests in the game itself. You have to mob grind a bit. And the whole leveling process is pretty much the gameplay. Whereas in retail, the gameplay comes at the end of the game, which is Mythic Plus, raiding, PvP. But yeah, Classic is all about the leveling. It's a lot slower of a process and a lot more tedious. Well, I say tedious. It is very good fun and very chilling, or chilled. But it is the entirety of Classic. It's what it's built around, compared to the other 2, when, like, Wrath of the Lich King has a decent balance, but retail is all about the endgame. So I have to make it to endgame on retail before I even have, like, before I experience the game. So I've got to slug out 69 levels. Yeah, you start at level 1, 69 levels just to get to that point. And then I can start having fun? Is that what you're telling me? No, because the leveling is actually quite good. You get to learn your character, you get to learn your class, what the class actually does, and your spells, and how they, you know, interact with a certain player, or how they interact with you. You know, you can get to learn your class very well. But it's more glorified, the end game of retail World of Warcraft, than the leveling of classic World of Warcraft. So they need to pick between 3 World of Warcrafts already, and it's like, oh, okay, I've not even gotten into the game. It's like, do you want to play retail WoW? You want to play Wrath of the Lich King World of Warcraft, or classic World of Warcraft? And then they need to figure out the differences, and it's like, well, why would I enjoy this one more? And what's the difference between this, and what's the difference between the classes even? Because Feral Druid in Classic is a very niche and, like, weird spec, because a level 40 Spirit Helm is your best in slot throughout the entirety of the expansion. What is power shifting in Classic? It's when you keep going in and out of cat form to get energy regen and stuff like that. Whereas in retail, you're sticking in cat form a lot of the time. are boomkins even good in Classic? They're kind of meh, but they go very quickly. Whereas in retail, they don't even have mana. Or they do, but it's not their primary resource. Same with hunters. There's many different things that have happened compared to comparing all of these expansions, and they just don't even know which one to go to first. They get very confused. It's like, well, Wrath of the Lich King seems like it's an expansion. World of Warcraft Classic just seems like it's an old version of World of Warcraft, so why even play that? Because surely I can play that on retail. But what one's Dragonflight? Why is this one different? There's so many different things that you can talk to them about just from the 3 World of Warcrafts alone. And then you've got PvP. PvP in retail, I'll do as the example, is very difficult to get into because if you're a very competitive person, you can feel like you're overwhelmed and getting pissed off because there's so many classes and so many specializations that you need to know what they do to get the most out of what you do in that arena. Like, for example, I know that a paladin, when he comes out of crowd control, will want to blessing a sacrifice and top someone up via using holy shocks or their divine toll. So what I want to do is try and pre-clone the target that he wants to heal, so that he uses blessing a sacrifice into a clone and he wastes that cooldown or a lay on hands or anything like that. But some people might just think, oh, okay, well, I do damage to this person and they'll die eventually, right? But no, it's all about crowd control. Well, what's crowd control? Crowd control is when you use your abilities like freezing trap, cyclone, fear, anything along them lines to stop the enemy player actually controlling their character. So you want to crowd control their healer in order to get more effective damage on the DPS. Okay, so I've learned what crowd control is, but yeah, now you have to realize what cross crowd control is. So you need to crowd control their second DPS so that their second DPS isn't peeling the damage from what you and your teammate are doing. Because if it's a druid they're against, he'll just spam cyclone you. So the crowd control that you got on their healer doesn't matter as much because their second DPS is crowd controlling you, stopping you from doing your effective DPS. So there's many different things to it. And then a lot of people are watching, you see all of these streams on Twitch, Peekaboo, Absturge, Jellybeans, you have loads of people, Waz, all of that, every single professional AWC player, you see them have different things on their screen. And you're like, wait, that's not on the normal UI. So then it's like, oh, these are add-ons. And then you go through the add-ons and it's like, okay, well, I need Omnibar. Omnibar tracks kicks. So you don't get counterspelled. It also tracks some big cooldowns. Okay, that's cool. Omnibar's cool. And then suddenly you want, S Arena or Gladius to track the diminishing returns for the crowd control that you do. And before you know it, you're overwhelmed with 6, 7, 8, 20, 50 add-ons. And it's like, okay, this is a completely different game because the baseline of the game doesn't give you this. It is very much, you have two bars of spells at maximum or something, and you have a mini-map and your health bar and the enemy health bar, obviously. But then you want, the arena frames with diminishing returns and omnibar, where you put in that. You might want details to see your damage, to see how effective and where your damage is coming from. You might want many different things, but it's a completely different game, and you've got to learn how to install the add-ons and keep them up to date and stuff like that. And it really does feel daunting to a new character if they want to, or to a new player, if they want to play it at a very decent level, if they are a competitive player and they want to get to level 70 and go into an arena, they're at a disadvantage because they don't know what add-ons are. So then they look into it and it's like, oh, okay, I've got to get this and all of that stuff. And then by that time, you feel worn out because it's like, Jesus Christ, this is so much effort to go through. With PvP, it's not as bad, but there's still add-ons, like you can get a different timer for your Mythic Plus like countdown or whatever. You can get deadly boss mods that say move out of stuff. Many different things like that. I don't think PvE is as tough because it is very much player versus environment, and it's a rinse and repeat type of deal. Because it's, okay, these mobs always do this ability, like that never changes, so I've just got to learn to sidestep it, or I've got to make sure that I'm interrupting this somehow. That kind of deal. That will never change. PvP is very much fluid. You're going to be experiencing something new every single game, and it will take tens of thousands of games for you to realize what situation you're in, because you might have seen it once in these 10,000 games, and it's like, okay, we've just got to hug the pillar. An example earlier was I was doing some arenas, and it was on Maldraxxus Colosseum. Now, I play with a hunter, survival hunter, and we were getting absolutely destroyed when we ran out into mid. We were like, okay, well, we're not going to do that anymore. The best bet that we have to do is just stay at the pillar. Stay at the pillar, hit whichever target is closest. And we did that for about 5 to 8 minutes, and it felt a lot more effective. We still lost the game because in them first 2-3 minutes, we'd already lost an extra 20% mana and stuff, and we eventually lost because we went But them following minutes after, we knew that the strat was to stay at the pillar and hug the pillar, and it almost got us the win. And we knew that a little bit quicker than what we would have done if we hadn't have seen that in the past. You can kind of adapt to things a lot quicker when it does come to PvP, and this is why it's a bit more challenging for newer players, because you have to play so many games to see these sort of things. Leveling wise, in all of the games, again, the leveling in retail is completely different to classic. Leveling in retail is very much you want to just get to the end of the journey, whereas classic, it's all about the journey. And these are completely different things. It really is. It's a real grinding classic, and in retail, it's very much, just get me through this, and then I can do my PvP and stuff. But that's where the PvP and the PvE in retail really do have a lasting effect on the player, and you've really got to grind it out compared to classic, which is very much, okay, I'm just going to chill and level, that kind of deal. But yeah, it's very tough to get into WoW because everything seems so overwhelming. The amount of spells, the amount of side things such as professions, pet battles, and then don't even get me started on gearing. It's like, what the hell is mastery? What the hell is haste? What is critical strike? Okay, I can somewhat guess what critical strike is. It's how much of a chance I have to crit. Okay, cool. But what's mastery? People wouldn't know what mastery is unless they found it in their little character selects or character panel, and you scroll over it and it will tell you what your mastery is for that spec. Now, mastery is not a group, a class-wide thing. It's very much for that specialization. So, Retribution Paladins, their mastery just straight up increases their holy power or holy damage. For Holy Paladin, their mastery is the closer you are to the target, the more your spells heal. Whereas a Boomkin's mastery is all about the damage when you have a eclipse, so a arcane or solar eclipse. It increases the damage of them eclipses by a certain percent. All of them are different, and you wouldn't know that. It's a very niche thing to not know, and it wouldn't tell you about that. It would tell you in the starting zone to equip gear, but when you actually get some gear that has stats on it, it's very much, oh, well, I've not encountered this. Is this good? Is this bad? Is this indifferent? And you wouldn't have any clue. You'd have to figure that out yourself. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges for players, is to actually get over that overwhelming period. And having someone there to help is always good, obviously. But that overwhelming period of you get new spells every level, you get new gear every level, you get a potential talent point if you're above level 10 every level, you still have quests to do, and you don't necessarily know where to go, you don't know how to get a mount, you don't know what your professions are or what they even do. You don't know what this little symbol of a paw is on your minimap? It's a pet battle. What the hell is a pet battle? Okay, now how do I sign up for arenas or battlegrounds or dungeons? Okay, you simply press I. Now that is covered in the starting zone, by the way. But you press I and you press join queue or enter queue. That kind of deal. And you'll be TP'd to the dungeon. Okay, what happens after the dungeon? Do I have to run all the way back through the dungeon to run out? No, you simply press leave group. Well, how do I leave group? Right click on your portrait and press leave group. There's many different things. Some of these are obviously common sense that you would try when in the game and learning it. But it does feel very overwhelming. Even from logging in, and it's like you see however many class/race combinations, and it's like, oh god, do I really have to pick between all of these? Okay, well the night elf's cool, but it can't be a shaman, and I really want it to be a shaman. Okay, so I'll settle for a dwarf shaman, because dwarves are cool, but I don't necessarily like where they start or something. All of that kind of stuff. It's very tough. It is very challenging for newer players to get into WoW, but once they're in it, you would, in my opinion, you need about 20 hours into the game to know whether or not it is the game for you. And gamers nowadays always load up a game, spend about an hour on it and think, yeah, this is the game for me, or no, this isn't. But MMOs are not like that at all. It's a completely different genre of game. Kind of like Baldur's Gate that's just come out. Baldur's Gate and is a really different game to anything else. But people either like it after a set amount of time or they hate it within 10 minutes. Now, if you're unsure, you probably do like it after that set amount of time, but you just don't give it the time that you need to in order to enjoy it. That's kind of what it is for World of Warcraft. You do need to try and invest some amount of time and then be able to make your assumption on it. I get with single player games because you only get a certain amount. There's no point going through the entire story and then being like, yeah, this isn't really the game for me. Well, you've played it. You kind of understand. So there was somewhat something that you enjoyed in there. It's a bit ridiculous to say that you didn't enjoy it considering you played through the entire thing. But you need a good amount of hours to figure out if it is the game for you or not. And that is one of the biggest challenges that face newer players in WoW to this day. But that is it for this episode. Thank you all very much for listening. As always, do check out Patreon, absolutely everything as well, social media-wise, TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, everything's down below. Please check out and support the show that way. But thank you all very much for listening, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.